Hey guys, we're continuing on with our Ben Franklin story. So here we go. Make sure that you're paying close attention to the reading. All right? Benjamin wanted very much to become a writer himself. When he read something he liked especially well, he rewrote it in his own words. And sometimes he would be hanged if he didn't think that he was better than the author. One of the things James printed was a newspaper. Benjamin's fingers were itching to write for it, for he who does not want to see his own words in print. But he knew that his brother would only laugh and say he was going to get too big for his britches and give him a whack into the bargain, so he kept his writing secret. One morning his brother found it under his door, a letter to the newspaper signed Widow Dogood. James did not recognize Benjamin's writing, for he had disguised it, and Benjamin chuckled and was very pleased with himself when not only his brother and his friends, but also the readers of the paper highly praised the widow's good sense and learning. His brother had many letters from the virtuous lady and printed them all before. Benjamin confessed that he was the widow. James was angry. After that, he was stricter than ever with Benjamin. In his eyes, Benjamin was a fresh little sprout who believed he could both print and write better than his master. Benjamin thought he was now too big to be thrashed by his brother. He had been his apprentice for 5 years and had become a very good printer. Yes, he had even run the printing shop alone while his brother was away. He asked his brother please to let him go so that he could find work for himself somewhere else. But James said no, he must stay till his 9 years were up. Then Benjamin made up his mind to run away. He knew it was wrong, but he could no longer stand his brother's harsh treatment. He sold some of his cherished books to get a little money, and late one night he secretly boarded a ship going to New York. He stood at the rail watching his native town vanish into the night. He felt small and lonely. His parents would be sad and his brother would be angry. He was only 17 and he did not know a soul in New York who might help him. The winds were fair, but even so, the trip to New York took 3 days. During the lull, the sailors fished and made a big haul of cod. They invited Benjamin to eat with them, but Benjamin said no thank you. He ate neither flesh nor fish, for he had read in a book that it was murder to kill and eat creatures that had done him no harm. But he loved codfish, and when the fish was cooking and the good smells reached his nose, he began to hunt about in his mind for a reason to share the sailor's meal. He remembered that when the codfish were cut open, he had seen small fish in their stomachs. If a big fish ate small fish, why should he not eat big fish? Then he ate heartily and thought to himself how lucky he was to be a thinking creature who could find a good reason for doing what he wanted to do. After that, Benjamin always ate what was set before him. Benjamin liked the sea voyage. When he arrived in New York, he stood at the wharf for a while and he thought. He could go to sea if he still wanted to, but he had to become a printer, and a printer he would be. New York was a very small town in 1723, and there was but one printer. He had no work for Benjamin and advised him to go to Philadelphia. Philadelphia was a larger town. So Benjamin set off for Philadelphia. He had very little money left and could not afford to travel all the way by ship. He stuffed what he could into his pockets and shipped the rest of his belongings. A few pennies paid his passage on a ramshackle old boat that was about to cross to the Jersey shore. Halfway across, a gale blew up and the rotten sails went to pieces. In the storm, a Dutchman fell overboard. Benjamin quickly grabbed him by the hair and pulled him back into the boat. The dripping Dutchman pulled a book out of his pocket and asked Benjamin to dry it for him. It was the most beautiful book Benjamin had ever seen. It had been printed in Europe with fine type and many pictures. That was the kind of book he would like to print. He had plenty of time to enjoy the book, for the boat pitched and tossed in the Bay of New York for 30 hours. At last, the crew managed to bring her to port on the Jersey shore, and cold and wet, Benjamin started to walk. It was a long way on foot, for it is 100 miles from New York to Philadelphia. For days he trudged through ruts and mud and rain and storm, and he began to be sorry he had ever run away. When he reached the Delaware River, he was lucky. A small boat came sailing downstream, and the crew took him on board. But soon the wind died down. Benjamin had to help row the boat till his hands were covered with blisters. He looked so bedraggled and furlong, it was a wonder he was not sent home as a runaway bound boy. That is the way he arrived in Philadelphia early on Sunday morning. People in their Sunday go-to meeting clothes were walking through the streets. Benjamin walked along with them, looking this way and that, till he came to an open bake shop. He was very hungry and went in and asked the baker for 3 pennies worth of bread. To his surprise, the baker handed him 3 huge buns, for bread was very cheap in Philadelphia. It was 3 times more than he could eat. The people turned their heads to hide their smiles when they saw Benjamin walking up Market Street with his pockets stuffed with clothes and his arms full of bread. A pretty girl standing in the doorway snickered and giggled out loud. He followed the people in the street until he came to a Quaker meeting house, which he entered. He was so exhausted that he fell asleep the moment he sat down. He had come to the city of brotherly love, so nobody woke him till the morning was over. Then a kind Quaker showed him to an inn where he could rest and eat. Scrubbed and refreshed, Benjamin went out the next morning, and soon he found work as a printer's helper. Nobody laughed at his looks any longer, but everybody laughed at his jokes. It was not long before the people in Philadelphia were telling one another how lucky it was that such a good printer and fine young fellow had settled in their town. Many of them made friends with him. The governor of Pennsylvania himself came to see if Benjamin was really as clever as people said. He asked him out to dine with him and was much taken by his good sense. He advised Benjamin to go back to Boston and ask his father's forgiveness for running away and his help in setting up a printing shop of his own. The governor, would help him to get printing to do. That sounded like good advice to Benjamin. 8 months after he had run away, he sailed back to Boston for a visit. He was dressed in a fine new suit. He had a watch, and silver coins jingled in his pocket. His parents were very happy that he had done so well and readily forgave him. But his father thought he was still too young to have a shop of his own, and told him to return to his well-paid work as a printer's helper. His brother would not forgive him, and it was not till many years later that the 2 brothers were friends again. His old minister, Cotton Mather, gave him some sound advice when Benjamin went to bid him goodbye before returning to Philadelphia. He pointed to a low beam under the ceiling, and he said, "Stoop as you go through life, young man, and you will miss many hard bumps." Benjamin understood what he meant. He promised himself to be humble wherever he felt like being cocky. But it was not easy for young Benjamin to be humble. When he returned to Philadelphia and the governor talked to him in big and flattering words, he forgot the good advice he had got in Boston. A stout fellow like this cough is nothing. A stout fellow like you must have his own shop. If your father won't help you, I will, said the governor, and Benjamin let himself be persuaded to set off for faraway London to buy a printing press there. The governor would lend him money and write letters to people who could help him. But nothing came of the governor's fine promises. When Benjamin reached England after a long and costly voyage, he found neither money nor letters waiting for him. Now Benjamin was really alone in the big wide world, but he was the kind who always made friends wherever he went and always got along with people. It was not long before he found work in the best printing houses in London. When he returned to Philadelphia a year and a half later, he brought no printing press with him, but he was humbler and wiser and had learned so much that he was really the best printer in the colonies. Now he could print books as fine as the one he had dried for the half-drowned Dutchman. This is the end of our reading. We'll come back tomorrow for some more. Talk to you soon.